A Haunting in Venice is the third installment in this modern series of movies where Kenneth Branagh plays Hercule Poirot in these movies, and he's directing them as well. This is following Death on the Nile in 2022 and then Murder on the Orient Express in 2017. Very weird how these movies have been released so far. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks of that, but yeah, 5-year gap and then just a 1-year gap. I don't know, it's strange. I know it was COVID and all, but still kind of confused as to why it happened that way. Anyway, the film follows Hercule in Venice, Italy on Halloween of all days, amongst some other people that are gathering for this seance taking place. And of course, because it's this kind of movie, someone dies, someone gets killed, and even though Hercule is actually trying to kind of retire and move away from his usual shtick, he of course resorts back to his detective tendencies and has to figure out who committed this murder because, of course, he's Hercule. That's what he does. The previous two movies from this series that were both directed and starring Kenneth Branagh were just fine in my opinion. I would say I did like Death on the Nile a tad bit more than Orient Express, but still wasn't really in love with either one of them. But one of the standouts of each of those movies, and this one too, has been Kenneth Branagh as this character. He clearly is just going all in with the accent, with the look, the persona of Hercule in general. I have a hard time saying the last names, that's why I keep saying Hercule, but he's great. He is fantastic as this character. In all these movies, really, I would say he's easily given the best performance in each of them. And, his direction hasn't been anything too standout-ish of the series, but I gotta say, in this one in particular, he actually does some things in this movie that did catch my eye. In particular, some shots with the camera, different lenses he uses to distort some of the images and some of the shots. One in particular where a character is walking, and I don't know what it's called, but the camera is strapped onto the actor, so we see their face up close as they're walking and moving around, but the camera is kind of staying in line with their head while they're moving around, and everything else is kind of shaky and moving in the background, but it's in line with their head and their face. Just very cool technique there. I'd like seeing more of that kind of filmmaking here that, in my opinion, was kind of lacking in the first two. And in general, I could say, just along with the other two, that the acting here all around is pretty solid. Maybe some lines here and there could have been delivered a little bit better, but the acting is good. I like the work of the cast in this movie. They're doing a good job. And I like the setup of this movie quite a bit too. I do think that Branagh did a good job of gathering all these characters together and introducing them and kind of just helping us figure out why they're all gathering to this one specific place together. And it's also a good way to utilize exposition, kind of give us some backstory to these characters, and just the necessarily information that we need to know leading up to this thing. Now, of course, though, if you have seen the trailers for this movie or even a poster, you're probably aware that this is going towards a horror direction and is going more towards kind of a scary movie. And I would say, it's actually handled pretty well here. The horrors, the scares, they are sparse, they're spread out through the movie, and I would say most of them do actually work well. The setting is utilized well here too. They're all basically trapped in this one building throughout almost the entire runtime, and of course it is dark a lot of the time. Most of the movie takes place during nights, and I would say it was appropriately creepy for the movie and for the story. It works pretty well, I thought. One thing though that unfortunately just did not really work for me with this movie, along with the other previous two, is all the stuff that happens after the murder happens, and it's kind of the scene is set alright, we all just need to stay here until we figure out who did this and who committed this murder. It's been with all three of these movies now. We just go through these consecutive scenes, a bunch of them in a row, where Hercule just goes around and asks people a bunch of questions and then moves on to the next person and the next person, and it really is just kind of this rinse and repeat formula of asking a certain person a series of questions and trying to learn more about them and where they were at this time. And at this point, I'm just getting a little tired of it, honestly. It really is not, I think, done that interestingly, which is unfortunate, because I do think that this movie, compared to the other two, and I don't mean to keep comparing them, hope no one's annoying me for doing that, has a little more flair to it. I think it has some more flashy filmmaking as well. But these scenes that happen around the middle of the movie are, once again, just kind of boring, in my opinion. Not all boring, but when I think back on it, it's like, yeah, it is kind of just a series of going from point A to point B to point C to point D and so on, of asking this person these questions and then moving on and asking this other person these questions, and it's not interesting. It's just plain and simple. It was kind of boring. But yeah, like I said, I don't mean to say that all of these scenes were bad, as we do learn some cool things about these characters that advance the story and develop the story in an interesting way for sure. And the performances are still good, and there are some good exchanges of dialogue between these characters. But looking back on it, it's like, there just wasn't enough diversity amongst these series of scenes, in my opinion. That's something that I feel like Bryan Johnson does a lot better with the two Knives Out movies, making use of, maybe the musical score to make these scenes more interesting, or using flashback scenes in an interesting way. Even just like simple change of scenery, adds a lot to those kinds of scenes where you need to give out the necessary exposition for the viewers. But yeah, that is just one main big flaw that I do have with the movie. I just felt like those moments could have been handled better on the whole, as well as a couple of characters being underwritten, in my opinion. Ariadne, who's portrayed by Tina Fey, for example, who I do think does a good job as a character, but she's really just kind of like almost like a cheerleader type character for Hercule, kind of by his side a lot, and listen to him, you're back to your old ways now, Hercule. That's basically her character in a nutshell. I mean, we do learn a little bit more about her towards the end, but yeah, could have used more from the writing for her. But there is still quite a bit to like about this movie. As I said, filmmaking wise, I do think it is a step up from the previous two for sure. The cast is still very good here, and the mystery is still intriguing. When we do actually find out who did do it, it was unexpected, and it seemed to be going in a direction where it was these couple characters or this character that might have done it, and that was a little more predictable when it went down that route. But then when we actually find out who it was, I was not expecting it. I was surprised, and so I do think that they handled the conclusion of the film very well. It was really well done, in my opinion. And yeah, I would say that this is actually definitely the best of these three movies so far. I did like it more than Express and Nile. For me, Haunting in Venice would get a solid 8 out of 10, 8.0. That's all I got for this review, though. Hope you guys liked it. Hope it wasn't confusing at all. I feel like I was kind of rambling a little bit at certain moments. It's also later in the day than it normally is when I make one of these videos, so this is just kind of a weird setting for me to be filming this late, but whatever. I'll stick with it. Haven't had a video out in a while, so I want to get one out. Let me know what you think about this movie in the comments, and that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching. Peace out.